The courtroom camera captured the exact moment when desperation turned into disaster. Karen Davis, a 42-year-old woman who had mastered the art of courtroom manipulation, sat clutching her chest and hyperventilating dramatically into a brown paper bag. Her face contorted in what she believed was a convincing display of medical distress, complete with trembling hands and gasping breaths that echoed through the silent courtroom. But Judge Judy sat completely motionless in her chair, arms crossed, face expressionless, not even blinking as she watched this theatrical performance unfold before her. What happened in the next 8 minutes would become the most shared courtroom moment in social media history, racking up over 50 million views and turning Karen Davis into the poster child for everything wrong with fake victimhood in America's legal system. Karen had walked into that courtroom on a Tuesday morning with absolute confidence that she had discovered the perfect escape plan. She had studied her strategy for weeks, watching YouTube videos about panic attack symptoms, memorizing medical terminology like tachycardia and dissociation, and practicing her performance in front of her bathroom mirror until she believed it looked genuine. In her designer handbag sat a paper bag specifically purchased for the hyperventilation scene she had planned, and on her wrist was a medical alert bracelet she had ordered from Amazon just 5 days earlier. This wasn't desperation born from actual medical distress. This was calculated manipulation from a woman who had turned courtroom theatrics into a reliable method of avoiding accountability. What Karen didn't know was that Judge Judy had seen this exact performance 247 times over her 28-year career, and she had already made a phone call before the hearing even started that would turn Karen's fake emergency into a very real nightmare. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Karen Davis wasn't just some random plaintiff trying to scam her way through small claims court. She was a serial litigator who had perfected a disturbing pattern over 3 years that had destroyed lives and wasted thousands of dollars in court resources. Between 2021 and 2024, Karen had filed lawsuits against 11 different people, ranging from former landlords to co-workers to service providers who had simply told her no. Her strategy was always the same. File a claim demanding money for emotional distress or anxiety, present herself as a fragile victim who had suffered tremendous psychological damage, and then the moment the case started going against her, suddenly develop a convenient medical emergency that would either get her sympathy from the judge or force a postponement that she could use to pressure her opponent into settling. In March 2021, during a small claims case over a car repair bill, Karen had clutched her chest and claimed severe heart palpitations that required immediate medical attention. The judge, concerned for her welfare, had called paramedics who found absolutely nothing wrong with her. But by the time they cleared her, the hearing had been postponed, and Karen used that delay to harass her opponent into dropping the case entirely. In August 2022, facing a traffic court judge over multiple parking violations, she had claimed respiratory distress so severe that she couldn't continue with the hearing. Once again, paramedics found her vitals completely normal, but the judge had shown sympathy and reduced her fine significantly. In February 2023, she had called for an ambulance during a civil court proceeding, claiming an anxiety attack so severe she thought she was dying. The pattern was unmistakable to anyone who bothered to look, but most judges only saw her once and had no way of knowing they were being manipulated by a woman who had turned medical fraud into a profitable hobby. The case that brought Karen to Judge Judy's courtroom was perhaps her most audacious attempt yet. She was suing Robert James, a 67-year-old retired high school teacher who had made the mistake of renting his small rental property to Karen for 8 months. What Robert thought would be a straightforward landlord-tenant relationship had turned into a nightmare that cost him thousands of dollars and months of stress. Karen had systematically destroyed his property, painting walls without permission, allowing her cats to damage the flooring, breaking tiles in the bathroom, and treating the place like she owned it. When Robert had tried to address these issues, Karen had responded with threats, telling him she would make his life hell if he didn't back off. After she refused to pay the final month's rent totaling $1,500, Robert had no choice but to begin eviction proceedings. The security deposit didn't even come close to covering the $4,800 in damages she had left behind. But Karen wasn't finished with Robert James. 2 weeks after being legally evicted, she filed a lawsuit against him in small claims court, demanding $3,500 for emotional distress and the therapy costs she claimed his eviction had caused her. She alleged that Robert's actions had given her severe anxiety and panic disorder, conditions she swore under oath she had never experienced before becoming his tenant. She had no therapy receipts, no medical records, no documentation whatsoever, but she walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that morning believing her performance would be enough. Judge Judy Scheindlin walked into her courtroom that morning with her characteristic no-nonsense demeanor, black robe flowing behind her as she took her position behind the bench. She had already spent 30 minutes before the hearing reviewing Karen Davis's case file, and what she discovered had made her lean back in her chair with that knowing smile that veteran court staff recognized immediately. Karen's litigation history wasn't just suspicious, it was a masterclass in pattern manipulation that Judge Judy had seen countless times in her decades on the bench. She had made several phone calls that morning, contacted the paramedic station 2 blocks away, and arranged for something that would either confirm her suspicions or prove her wrong. Either way, the truth was about to come out in the most public way imaginable. Karen sat in the plaintiff's chair looking remarkably confident for someone whose entire case rested on fabricated emotional distress claims. She wore a carefully chosen outfit, a modest blouse and slacks that projected respectability, and her makeup was applied to make her look slightly tired and stressed, as if the trauma she claimed was visible on her face. Across from her sat Robert James, a gentle-looking elderly man clutching a thick folder of evidence and photographs, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and cautious hope. He had been through so much dealing with Karen's destruction of his property and her subsequent harassment that he almost couldn't believe he was finally getting his day in court with a judge who might actually see through her manipulation. The audience settled into their seats, cameras positioned perfectly to capture every moment, and the bailiff called the court to order. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her signature directness, her voice cutting through the courtroom with authority that immediately commanded attention. Ms. Davis, you're suing your former landlord Mr. James for $3,500, claiming he caused you emotional distress through wrongful eviction. Tell me about this anxiety disorder you say he caused. Karen launched into her rehearsed testimony with the confidence of someone who had performed this routine successfully before. Your Honor, the eviction was absolutely traumatic for me. I had never experienced anxiety like this in my entire life. Mr. James's aggressive behavior and the way he forced me out of my home caused me to develop severe panic disorder. I've had trouble sleeping, constant worry, and I've been unable to function normally. I need compensation for the therapy I've had to undergo because of his actions. Judge Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, that first warning sign that experienced viewers of her show knew meant she had spotted something that didn't add up. Ms. Davis, you mentioned therapy. Do you have receipts for these therapy sessions you claim to have attended? Karen fumbled slightly, her confident demeanor cracking just a bit. Well, Your Honor, I don't have them with me today, but I can get them. Judge Judy's expression didn't change. You don't have them with you for a case about therapy costs. That's interesting. What's your therapist's name? Karen hesitated for just a moment too long before answering. Dr. Martinez, over on Westwood Boulevard. I've been seeing her for about 6 months now. Judge Judy made a note on her pad, and something in that simple gesture made Karen shift uncomfortably in her seat. The judge then turned her attention to Robert James, asking him to present his side of the case. Robert's voice shook slightly with emotion as he described the 8 months of hell that Karen had put him through. Your Honor, I rented to Ms. Davis in good faith. I'm retired, and that rental property supplements my pension. I've been a landlord for 15 years and never had problems like this. She destroyed my property systematically. Painted the walls dark colors without permission, let her cats ruin the carpeting and flooring, broke tiles in the bathroom, and when I tried to address these issues respectfully, she threatened me. He opened his folder and began passing photographs to Judge Judy, images that showed a rental property that had been treated with complete disregard. She refused to pay the last month's rent, and when I had to evict her legally, she turned around and sued me. Judge Judy examined the photographs carefully, her expression growing more serious with each image she reviewed. Mr. James, how much did it cost you to repair the damage Ms. Davis caused? Robert pulled out itemized receipts. $4,800, Your Honor. New flooring, repainting all the walls back to neutral colors, replacing broken tiles, deep cleaning to remove pet odors. I used her security deposit, but it only covered about a third of the actual damage. Judge Judy turned back to Karen, whose confident expression had begun to slip. Ms. Davis, you're claiming Mr. James caused you emotional distress, but these photographs show you caused him significant financial distress. How do you explain this level of damage to someone else's property? Karen's response came with the first hints of defensiveness that would soon escalate into full theatrical performance. Your Honor, those pictures are exaggerated. Normal wear and tear shouldn't be held against a tenant. And besides, the stress of living in that property with Mr. James constantly harassing me about minor issues is what caused my anxiety disorder. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, and anyone who had watched her show before knew that this posture meant she was about to spring a trap that had been carefully set from the beginning. Judge Judy's next question came with deceptive casualness, her tone conversational but her eyes sharp with the focus of a predator who had just spotted its prey making a critical mistake. Ms. Davis, you mentioned that Mr. James caused you to develop anxiety disorder and panic attacks. Tell me, how long have you suffered from panic disorder? Karen responded without hesitation, clearly believing she was still in control of the narrative. Since the eviction, Your Honor. About 6 months now. Before that, I never experienced anything like this. Mr. James's actions completely destroyed my mental health. Judge Judy nodded slowly, as if absorbing this information. And before the eviction, you had never had a panic attack in your life? Never experienced anxiety disorder? Karen shook her head emphatically. No, never. I was perfectly healthy until this landlord put me through this nightmare. It's been absolutely devastating. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair with that slight smile that made the audience lean forward in anticipation. She opened another folder that had been sitting on her bench, one that Karen hadn't noticed before. That's very interesting, Ms. Davis, because I have some documents here that tell a very different story about your medical history and your courtroom history. Karen's confident expression flickered for just a moment, confusion crossing her face before she managed to compose herself again. I don't know what you're talking about, Your Honor. Judge Judy's voice remained calm, almost pleasant, which somehow made what she said next even more devastating. I'm talking about the fact that you've been a plaintiff in 11 different lawsuits over the past 3 years. I'm talking about the pattern of you claiming medical emergencies in multiple courtrooms when your cases aren't going well. Would you like me to continue? The color began draining from Karen's face as Judge Judy methodically laid out the evidence of her courtroom manipulation. In March 2021, you claimed severe heart palpitations during a small claims case about a car repair bill. Paramedics were called, found nothing wrong with you, but the case got postponed and eventually dropped. In August 2022, you had respiratory distress in traffic court that somehow disappeared the moment the judge reduced your fines. In February 2023, you required an ambulance during a civil court case, another panic attack that paramedics determined was not a medical emergency. Judge Judy paused, letting each revelation sink in as the courtroom audience murmured with growing disapproval. Karen, you seem to have medical emergencies very conveniently, always when you're losing, always when you need sympathy, and always with the same result of normal vital signs when medical professionals actually examine you. Karen's breathing began to quicken, but this time it was genuine panic, the panic of someone whose carefully constructed lies were collapsing around her in front of millions of viewers. That's not fair, Your Honor. Those were different situations. You're taking things out of context. Judge Judy's expression hardened. I'm taking court records and paramedic reports out of context. These are documented facts, Ms. Davis. You have a pattern of manipulating the legal system with fake medical emergencies. And here you are again, claiming that this landlord gave you anxiety disorder when the evidence shows you've been playing this game for years. That's when Karen made the decision that would seal her fate and create one of the most viral courtroom moments in television history. She suddenly clutched her chest with both hands, her eyes going wide as she began breathing rapidly and dramatically. I can't breathe," she gasped, reaching into her handbag with trembling hands to pull out the brown paper bag she had prepared specifically for this moment. "Your Honor, I'm having a panic attack right now. This is too much stress. I can't handle this." She began hyperventilating into the bag, her whole body shaking as she slumped slightly in her chair. "The room is spinning," she moaned, placing her free hand on her forehead. "I'm experiencing tachycardia. I feel completely dissociated from my body. I need medical attention." The bailiff stepped forward instinctively, uncertain about protocol for this situation. Several audience members gasped, some looking genuinely concerned while others wore expressions of deep skepticism. Robert James looked completely bewildered by this sudden turn of events, his evidence folder still in his hands as he watched Karen's performance unfold. The court stenographer paused her typing, glancing up at Judge Judy to see how she would respond to this medical emergency. And Judge Judy, America's toughest television judge, the woman who had demolished thousands of liars and manipulators over nearly 3 decades, did something that nobody expected. She didn't move a single muscle. Her expression remained completely unchanged, arms still crossed, face showing neither concern nor alarm nor any reaction whatsoever. She simply sat there in absolute silence, watching Karen's theatrical performance with the same level of interest one might show watching paint dry. The silence stretched on for 10 seconds, then 20, then 30. Karen continued her hyperventilating routine, occasionally peeking through her fingers to check if her performance was having the desired effect. Judge Judy still hadn't moved. The audience began to realize they were witnessing something extraordinary, a judge who was calling this bluff in the most powerful way possible by simply refusing to react. Karen's breathing grew more dramatic, her moaning louder, clearly trying to force some kind of response. "I really need help, Your Honor. Please, I'm having a medical emergency." Judge Judy finally spoke, and her voice was completely flat, devoid of sympathy or concern. "Ms. Davis, are you finished with your performance?" Karen continued her hyperventilating act, though Judge Judy's question had clearly thrown her off balance. Between gasps into her paper bag, she managed to whimper, "I need medical attention, Your Honor. This is real. I can't breathe properly. My heart is racing." Judge Judy reached for the phone on her desk, an action so unexpected that even the bailiff looked surprised. In 28 years of presiding over her television courtroom, Judge Judy had never picked up that phone during an active case. She pressed a button and spoke with absolute calm. "Bailiff, please call the paramedics immediately. Ms. Davis is claiming she's having a medical emergency, and we need to take that very seriously. And while you're making that call, have a police officer come up to the courtroom as well. We may need an official witness for what happens next." The change in Karen's demeanor was instantaneous and dramatic. Her hyperventilating slowed by at least 50% within seconds. Her eyes, which had been squeezed shut in apparent distress, flew open wide with genuine alarm. This clearly wasn't part of her plan. "Wait," she said, her voice suddenly much stronger and clearer than it had been moments before. "Maybe I just need some water. I think I might be feeling a little better already." Judge Judy's expression remained stone cold. No, Ms. Davis. You said medical emergency. You claimed you couldn't breathe, that your heart was racing, that you felt dissociated from your body. Those are serious symptoms that require immediate medical evaluation. We take medical emergencies very seriously in this courtroom, and I want trained paramedics to examine you thoroughly to ensure you're not in any danger. Karen tried desperately to backtrack, her fake panic attack symptoms evaporating in real time as she realized the trap she had walked into. "Your Honor, really, I think the moment has passed. Sometimes panic attacks just come and go quickly. I don't want to waste anyone's time." Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice taking on an edge that could cut through steel. "Waste anyone's time? You've wasted the time of multiple courts with your fake medical emergencies over the past 3 years. You've wasted paramedic resources that could have been helping people with real emergencies. And now you want to tell me we shouldn't waste time making sure you're actually having the medical crisis you just claimed to be experiencing? The paramedics will be here in approximately 3 minutes, and they will conduct a full medical evaluation. You're not leaving this courtroom until medical professionals have determined whether or not you're actually in distress. The courtroom had fallen into absolute silence, every person present understanding they were witnessing something unprecedented. Karen sat in her chair looking pale, but now it was the genuine pallor of someone who had been caught in a lie and couldn't find a way out. She had 2 choices, and both were disasters. If she admitted right now that she was fine, she would be exposed on national television as someone who faked a medical emergency to manipulate the court. If she continued with her fake symptoms, she would have to undergo a full paramedic examination that would prove she was lying with medical equipment and professional testimony. She was trapped in her own performance, and Judge Judy had orchestrated it perfectly. True to Judge Judy's timeline, the courtroom doors opened exactly 3 minutes later, and 2 paramedics entered with their medical equipment bags and a portable monitor. They were professionals in their mid-30s, a man and a woman, both moving with the efficient calm of people who dealt with actual emergencies every single day. The lead paramedic, a woman with her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, approached Karen's chair. "Ma'am, we understand you're experiencing a panic attack. Can you describe your symptoms for me?" Karen's voice came out weak and uncertain. "I was having trouble breathing, and my heart felt like it was racing, but I think it's calming down now. Maybe I don't really need a full examination." Judge Judy's voice cut through Karen's attempt to escape. "Paramedic, please conduct a complete evaluation. Take all the time you need. I want a thorough assessment of her vital signs and a professional opinion on whether she's experiencing a genuine medical emergency." The paramedic nodded and began unpacking her equipment. This wasn't a courtesy check or a quick once-over. This was going to be a full medical workup conducted in front of cameras, a courtroom audience, and millions of television viewers. Karen had no choice but to sit there and submit to an examination that would expose every lie she had told. The paramedics worked methodically, wrapping a blood pressure cuff around Karen's arm and placing a pulse oximeter on her finger. The male paramedic pulled out a stethoscope while his partner prepared to document every finding. "Ma'am, on a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious do you feel right now?" Karen hesitated, clearly trying to figure out what answer would be believable. Maybe a 7. The paramedic made a note. "Are you currently experiencing chest pain?" Karen shifted uncomfortably. "A little. Maybe. I'm not really sure." The uncertainty in every answer was damning, showing someone who was making up symptoms as she went rather than describing actual medical distress she was experiencing. The blood pressure cuff inflated and then slowly released as the digital monitor displayed numbers that would seal Karen's fate. The lead paramedic read the results aloud for the court record. "Blood pressure is 120/78. That's perfectly normal and healthy." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the paramedic continued with clinical precision. "Heart rate is 82 beats per minute, well within the normal range of 60 to 100. For someone claiming their heart is racing during a panic attack, this is completely normal." The pulse oximeter on Karen's finger beeped steadily. "Oxygen saturation is 99%. That's excellent. There are no signs of respiratory distress whatsoever." Each number, each measurement, each clinical observation systematically dismantled Karen's performance with the cold objectivity of medical science. The male paramedic completed his examination and turned to Judge Judy with professional courtesy. "Your Honor, we've completed our assessment. This individual is displaying no physiological signs of a panic attack or any other medical emergency. All vital signs are completely normal. There's no tachycardia, no respiratory distress, no indication of any acute medical condition requiring intervention or transport." Judge Judy nodded slowly, her expression one of vindication rather than surprise. "So you're telling this court, for the official record, that Ms. Davis is not experiencing a medical emergency of any kind?" The paramedics' response was clear and unambiguous. "That is correct, Your Honor. There is no medical emergency here." "Thank you for your professional assessment," Judge Judy said, dismissing them. The paramedics packed their equipment and left the courtroom, and Karen sat exposed and humiliated, her fake panic attack officially debunked by medical professionals on national television. Judge Judy turned her full attention to Karen, and the look on her face was one of absolute contempt mixed with grim satisfaction. "Ms. Davis, your vital signs are remarkably normal for someone who claimed to be having a medical crisis just minutes ago. It appears your panic attack was very short-lived, or perhaps it was never real to begin with." Karen tried one last desperate defense. "I was really scared, Your Honor. The stress of this situation was overwhelming." Judge Judy cut her off with surgical precision. "Scared of being held accountable, perhaps. Scared of being exposed as a serial manipulator who has spent 3 years gaming the legal system with fake medical emergencies." But Judge Judy wasn't finished destroying Karen's credibility. She opened yet another folder, this one containing information that would end Karen's ability to manipulate courtrooms forever. "Ms. Davis, let's talk about your real medical history, the one documented in public court records. You've claimed medical emergencies in 4 previous courtrooms. In March 2021, severe heart palpitations during a small claims case, paramedics found nothing wrong. In August 2022, respiratory distress in traffic court, again completely normal vital signs. In February 2023, an anxiety attack requiring an ambulance in civil court, medical professionals cleared you at the scene. In June 2023, chest pain and dizziness in housing court, no medical findings to support your claims. And here's what makes this pattern even more interesting. Judge Judy pulled out printed pages that Karen recognized with horror as her own social media posts. The day after your heart palpitations, you posted photos from a concert. The day after your respiratory distress, you checked in at the gym. The day after your supposed anxiety attack, you were posting vacation photos from the beach. You make remarkably fast recoveries the moment you leave courtrooms. Judge Judy addressed the camera directly, speaking to the millions of viewers watching this systematic destruction unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what courtroom manipulation looks like. Ms. Davis researches symptoms online, memorizes medical terminology, and then performs fake emergencies when she's losing cases. Previous judges showed sympathy and gave her continuances or reduced penalties, teaching her that medical manipulation works. But she made one critical error. She tried this performance in my courtroom, and I've been doing this for 28 years. I've seen every scam, every con, every manipulation tactic that exists. And I don't reward fake victims. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, and Karen slumped in her chair completely defeated, all traces of her earlier confidence erased. The ruling came with devastating finality. Case dismissed. Ms. Davis, you owe Mr. James absolutely nothing for your fraudulent emotional distress claim. Furthermore, Mr. James's counterclaim is granted in full. You owe him $4,800 for property damage, $1,500 for unpaid rent, and $2,200 for court costs and legal fees. Total judgment against you is $8,500. You walked in here demanding $3,500. You're walking out owing $8,500. Judge Judy's final statement was delivered with the weight of absolute authority. Ms. Davis, you are a manipulator who has wasted court resources, paramedic time, and taxpayer money with fraudulent medical claims. This ruling and the video of this hearing will be submitted to every courthouse in this jurisdiction. The next time you try to fake a medical emergency to avoid accountability, every judge will know exactly who you are and what you do. We're adjourned. Get out of my courtroom. The gavel came down with crushing finality. Within 2 hours of the episode airing, video clips exploded across every social media platform. The footage of Judge Judy sitting motionless while Karen performed her fake panic attack became an instant meme, shared millions of times with captions like, "When someone tries to manipulate you but you've seen it all before," and, "Judge Judy's face says everything." The hashtags fake panic attack and Judge Judy justice trended worldwide as the video accumulated 8 million views in the first 24 hours alone. By the end of the week, it had been viewed over 50 million times, becoming the most shared Judge Judy clip in the show's history. Karen Davis had wanted attention and validation. Instead, she became the most infamous example of courtroom manipulation in television history, a cautionary tale about what happens when you try to fake your way out of accountability in front of a judge who's seen every trick in the book.